CM Punk was just on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, and he absolutely exposed his time in AEW. He specifically talked about the Elite and the Hangman Page situation. He talked about everything that went down with Jack Perry. He talked about Tony Khan, and I wanted to talk about this in more detail. But first, let's take a look at this clip.
And I know a lot of people are going to be upset. It's just not predicated. It's not a real business. It's not about...
What do you mean by that?
It's not about selling tickets. It's not about drawing money. It's not about making money. It's just not.
What's it about?
I don't know.
Really?
I think having good matches, maybe. And there's nothing wrong with that. I was recently at an indie show, and somebody came up to me and they asked me, oh, did you watch my match? And I said, yeah. I'm like, oh, can you give me anything? And I almost really kind of faced like this dilemma, because where I was just like, and I looked at her and I said, what do you think I'm going to say? Well, you're going to tell me I need to sell more and not do as many moves. Yeah, okay, because it's a preference, right? Like it's a flavor of ice cream. But then I asked her, I said, what's the house here tonight? And she said, it's sold out. It's an arcade bar in Chicago. And I said, what can I tell you? You sold the place out. So at this level, and this wasn't like I'm on this level and I'm talking down to you, but I said, at this level, you're doing everything you can. I said, but that shit does not fly on national television. I think that's being proven right now. Maybe sometimes, maybe little bites here and there. It's not a sustainable business.
It's very clear when you listen to CM Punk's comments here that you just need to understand, if you watch this entire interview, that CM Punk and AEW were just never meant to be. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this interview and think that he's truly, truly regretful about his time there and stuff like that. But it just seems like in order for CM Punk to come back to WWE and be happy today, he had to experience that in AEW. And there was a couple of things that I really noticed in this interview that captured my attention. But you need to understand the premise of this video is the fact that I really just don't think they were a good mix. Now, I'm going to give you guys a couple different examples, but you need to know a little bit of a backstory. For one, when CM Punk was brought into AEW, he did confirm that he actually had 2 contracts with the company. One where he was a performer, and the second one was where he was considered a consultant to Tony Khan. Obviously makes sense. CM Punk being a longtime veteran of the business, he's there to help Tony Khan and guide him in certain areas and stuff like that. And it was interesting because this was never confirmed publicly. There was always rumors about it, but nobody really knew exactly what it was. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because in AEW, if you're given a position like this, that means you're able to get healthcare and all that type of stuff. It's just more of like a logistics thing from the back end of things in terms of employment. Now, with that being said, CM Punk was talking about the business side of things. And, it seems like really what CM Punk understood about AEW is that, and then the reason why it's not a good match is he was more about trying to put people in seats. He was more about trying to get ratings and like actually grow the business and get revenue and that type of thing. And he believes that's kind of the reason why he was brought in. And when he talks about Adam Page and he speaks about Adam Page going into business for himself with the promo, they're rehearsing things beforehand. He does his own thing. This all kind of trickles down into an effect where he felt like nobody in AEW wanted him. And he actually says very specifically, he said that the Elite didn't want him there. They never wanted him there. But there is also a lot of people there that do like him and did want him there. It just seems like AEW's target audience and what CM Punk wants to provide is just it's just not cohesive together. And he really goes in on the idea of like kind of what he says with about Tony Khan, right? And like the Jungle Boy thing. He talks about Tony Khan and Jungle Boy, and basically he exposes the fact that Tony Khan's not a real leader. There's been instances in the company where people were going into business for themselves, whether it was Hangman Page or others. He would talk about these things publicly, and then he would mention how he would go to Tony Khan about it and nothing would be done. the whole Jack Perry thing happening on Collision, you know, CM Punk was like, you know, his story is that he was respectful about it. Tony Schiavone and other people are saying, no, you can't do this. Jack Perry got pissed at CM Punk. And, you know, he kind of goes on to say, like, I go to Tony Khan and say, take care of this because you're not going to like how I take care of this. And he exposes the fact that Tony Khan is not a real leader. And he says it. He says that Tony Khan's not a real leader. He says he is a nice guy. He is not a boss. And, you know, I think it sucks when you hear that, like, there's all of these issues in AEW because at the end of the day, when CM Punk was coming back from pro wrestling, he was gone for so long. He goes into AEW. You think this is going to be magical. And he's basically coming out here publicly saying, look, they have a different mindset in terms of business. And one thing that he says, he says, if you're more happy about some goof saying you had a 5-star match, but the building is a quarter full, then they are in different businesses. And just even hearing him say that, it's like, it does make sense. Like, AEW really does book for the hardcore audience, and that's completely fine. But at the same time, too, if you're telling CM Punk to book Collision and you have guys going into business for themselves and you're trying to separate the rosters because of the drama and stuff like that, and then there's problems arising, it's very, very frustrating for someone in that position because you're supposed to be a person with power. People aren't listening. And then you go to the boss and say, hey, take care of this. It's not being taken care of. Clearly, it results in more issues. Now, I just want to say, if you've made it to this point in the video, there is 2 sides to every story. CM Punk has been slandered ever since since the All Out incident, from Brawl Out to All In, right? And you see how he's slandered. This is him saying his story. Obviously, AEW has their own side. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. You know, he was very, very complimentary to MJF, but then he says MJF wasn't that great when he started to go towards that very hardcore audience. And I think, you know, in reality, I said this 3 years ago. Like, if you're targeting that audience, I think it is a very bad choice. And it's that audience will be the one that, you know, you anger them once and piss them off, they'll turn their backs on you. And I think you start to see that a little bit with AEW. Now, obviously, in 2024, things seem to be improving quite a bit. But at the end of the day, when CM Punk is talking about AEW here, he did not have a good experience. And, you know, he met a lot of great people there and he wishes them luck. But clearly, they were just not a fit. They were not a match. 2 different philosophies on the business. I think Tony Khan also, you know, it's one thing that's been said several times, you know, even when the Cody drama was talked about, there was a lot of rumors that Tony Khan was not a great leader to run a wrestling show. And maybe there's truth to that. Now he's hired some people to help out and things, you know, seem to be getting better, but you got to factor those things in. You really do. And one thing I want to say too is he talked a little bit about WWE and he talked about Vince McMahon and he talked about his experiences there. And, you know, the reason why CM Punk is even fine in WWE these days, Endeavor, TKO run a tight ship. And I think that's a big difference. And Nick Khan, he even says that Nick Khan is a big difference maker for him. But it just goes to show you what I was saying, you know, several months ago, is that, you know, with WWE and AEW, the reason why I didn't have a concern with him going to WWE and having backstage issues is actually very simple. I think WWE, well, first of all, he knows if shit goes south in WWE, he's gone. But I also think people in AEW truly didn't want him. And I think people in WWE, I'm sure some people didn't want him, but it's like, hey, this is a company that's going to tell you, like, they're not going to allow this shit to happen. And I don't think people respected Tony Khan and AEW enough to say, you know, things wouldn't go down. So very interesting, very, very interesting interview. But again, there's 2 sides to every story. This is his side. I still remain very, very, very firm with my opinion since the original All Out Brawl. I said, if you're involved in this, I don't really care what the sides of the story is. If you got people fighting backstage like that and you're having a brawl backstage and all these reports, I think it is very clear everybody should be fired. And that never happened. And now you got an owner picking sides. And that's essentially what happened later on down the line too. So very, very, very interesting interview. Hopefully you guys check it out in its entirety. Context is everything. But very, very good stuff.